Hello, Algebra students, and welcome to our Chapter 3 test review, Bellwork, and notes. So I picked out some problems today so that we can practice for what you're going to see on this Chapter 3 test, okay? So let's start with some inequalities and solving them. So first inequality to practice on would be 4 times the quantity 3x minus 1 is less than 20. Okay, remember when we're trying to solve inequalities, we solve them like equations. So first thing we want to do is distribute. 4 times 3x is going to give us 12x. And then 4 times negative 1 is going to give us negative 4. We write that down as a minus sign. And we say now is less than 20. Okay, now we're going to solve this just like we would an equation. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add 4 to both sides. Okay, that gives us 12x is less than now 24. And then we're going to divide by 12. And we end up with x is less than 2. And this is the answer to the inequality. X is less than 2. If you had to graph that, it would be an open circle and the arrow would be pointing to the right, or to the left, right? Okay. Let's do the next one. So the next one gets a little more complicated. Still an inequality again, right? So make sure if you have an inequality in your problem, in your answer, you must use an inequality, okay? If you use an equal sign, it's automatically incorrect. Okay, again, we have to start by distributing. So 4 times 3x gives us 12x again. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and that is greater than negative 20 plus 8x. Okay, if we continue to solve here, right, we have an x on either side of the equation, so we're going to have to cancel one of them. I'm going to cancel this 8x by subtracting and subtracting over here. So now I have 4x minus 20 is greater than negative 20. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to cancel out this minus 20 by adding. Okay, now I'm gonna continue up here because of space, but now I have 4x then is greater than 0. Negative 20 plus 20 gives me 0. Okay, if I keep going, all right, and I divide by 4 on both sides, I get x, and then you want to try that in your calculator. 0 divided by 4. What do you get? Does it say 0 or does it say error? It should say 0, okay? And if it says 0, we leave it, all right? X is greater than 0, and this is the answer. If the 0 is at the bottom and it says error, that would be a no solution, okay? But this one in this case is x is greater than 0. Okay, getting more complicated, going down. Right now you're looking, you have two different inequality symbols, which means you are solving a compound inequality. If you have two inequality symbols, you're going to have to split this up and solve two different sides of it, and then either put and or put it back together, okay? And so let's start by splitting it up. So on the left side, by splitting it, what I mean is I'm going to do this inequality with the middle. So negative 1 is less than or equal to 4x. That's one side. The other side is this, would be 4x is less than or equal to 8. Okay, and I'm going to solve these separately. So this side, what I need to do is divide by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Divide by 4 here and divide by 4 here. Okay, if you try to divide this, you will get a decimal. Let's just leave it as a fraction. So I have negative 1/4 is less than or equal to x on this side. This side, if I divide by 4 and I divide by 4, I have x is less than or equal to 2. Okay, now the question is this an and or is it an or? One of the for sure ways to know the difference, even though it does not say graph, is to graph it, okay? So if I graph this guy, I know I've got to have negative 1/4 on there. Okay, I put that on there. And I have to have positive 2. And since it doesn't say graph, I can just put those two on there, all right? And I'm going to put 0 in right here. the reason I don't need the other stuff right now is it doesn't tell me I need to graph. I'm only using the graph so that I can figure out if this is an and or an or here, okay? So now this one right here, this x is not on the correct side to know to use the cheat, right? So if I turn it around, x, and I put the -1/4. If I look at this, the alligator is eating the x, right? So if I turn it around, I still have to make sure the alligator is eating the x. We only do this so that we can do the graph correctly. All right, so looking at this, that means this is going to point to our right, okay? So around the 1/4, this is pointing to the right. This one is in the right direction that we need it to be. If I put that, this one is pointing to our left. So these are going to connect, right? And if they connect, we know we use the word and. All right, so technically this is a correct answer, but we want to get used to putting it back together as a compound inequality where we have -1/4, our lower limit is less than or equal to x. And then we don't rewrite the x, we just write the next one is less than or equal to 2. And this is the answer to the inequality, the compound inequality. Okay, good. Even more complicated now. Here's the next one. So this is absolute value, and we have an inequality. Now, since everything is in the absolute value symbols, you can start by splitting this up. If there was other stuff on the outside, we would have to get rid of that first, and then we can split it up. But what we're going to do is we're going to start by splitting this in two. So the first one is as we see it. It is 3x minus 6 is less than or equal to 9. The other one, when we split this up, is we're going to say this is 3x minus 6. We're going to flip that inequality around and make the answer here negative. And we're going to solve them individually, all right? So we're going to start by adding 6, to both sides. So now I've got 3x is less than or equal to 15. And then I'm going to divide by 3. Okay, and this side I get x is less than or equal to 5. This side, do the same moves. I'm going to add 6. So now I've got 3x is greater than or equal to, well, -9 plus 6 is -3. Now I want to divide by 3 here. And this side says x is greater than or equal to -1. Okay, so I know the inequalities. The question is this now an and or an or? So again, I encourage you to graph it to figure it out. Again, if it doesn't say graph, you don't have to put all the numbers in. I know I need a 5 and a -1. All right, so -1 and a 5. And I'm doing it like this so that I can get a quick answer. All right, so around the 5, closed circle, right? That doesn't really matter for our answer at this point. And this one is in the right direction, so it is pointing to our left. All right, see how it's pointing to the left? And then this one, again, closed circle, and this one is pointing to our right, so these will connect. So this is another and question. Now, when you put these back together, I want to caution you, all right? This is our lower limit. This is the one that is the smallest. So you start with that guy, and the 5 is on the other side. The x is in the middle. How do you know what way the inequalities face? Is by looking at this. So in this one, the alligator is eating the x. So on this side, we need the alligator to eat the x. This one, the alligator eats the 5. So I need the alligator to eat the 5 on this one. Here's our answer. Cool. All right, one more then. Write the inequalities. So if you are given a graph like this, you're expected to be able to write the inequality that goes with the graph. And so here, it's not that challenging if you just look at what you've got. You know your limits. You know you've got a -1 is your lower limit, and a +2 is your upper limit. And you know that it's going to be a compound inequality because there are two sides to it. So you can put x or whatever letter you want in the middle, right? Now, this one you know is going to have a line underneath, and this one's not because this one's closed and this one's open. The question is, what direction are they going to face, right? So for this one, the -1, right? Our arrow, if it was written like this, where x is on the left, our arrow would be pointing that way, right? So what we want to do is take a look at this. This alligator is eating the x. So we had to switch it for a compound inequality, make sure the alligator is eating the x. This one, we would have x and 2, right? And so this alligator going this way, see how it's going pointing this direction, it would go like this. So this alligator is eating the 2. So make sure it's eating the 2 on your answer. And that's our final answer for writing the inequality. Okay, this is part 1 of test review. I'm going to make a part 2 as well. So see the next video for part 2. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.